whatever way we observe the world around us.
So how can you continue to see the world as real if the self that is determining it to be real is intangible?
Ahoy there, matey! You in for the long haul? You need a little hitch in your get-along, a little lift on down the line.
Yeah, actually I was waiting for a cab or something, but if you wanna...
All right, don't miss the boat.
Hey, thanks.
Not a problem. Anchors away! So what do you think of my little vessel? She's what we call seaworthy, S-E-E, see with your eyes. I feel like my transport should be an extension of my personality. Voila. And this is like my little window to the world, and every minute's a different show. Now, I may not understand it, I may not even necessarily agree with it, but I'll tell you what, I accept it and just sort of glide along. You want to keep things on an even keel, I guess is what I'm saying. You want to go with the flow. The sea refuses no river. The idea is to remain in a state of constant departure while always arriving. It saves on introductions and goodbyes. The ride does not require an explanation, just occupants. That's where you guys come in. Just give me an address or something, okay?
Tell you what. Go up 3 more streets, take a right, go 2 more blocks, drop this guy off on the next corner.
Where's that? Well, I don't know either, but it's somewhere. And it's going to determine the course of the rest of your life. All ashore that's going ashore.
place of God. But some philosophical problems remain as troubling as ever. Take the problem of free will. This problem's been around for a long time, since before Aristotle in 350 BC. St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, these guys all worried about how we can be free if God already knows in advance everything you're going to do. Nowadays, we know that the world operates according to some fundamental physical laws. And these laws govern the behavior of every object in the world. Now, these laws, because they're so trustworthy, they enable incredible technological achievements, but look at yourself, we're just physical systems too, right? We're just complex arrangements of carbon molecules, we're mostly water, and our behavior isn't going to be an exception to these basic physical laws. So it starts to look like whether it's God setting things up in advance and knowing everything you're going to do, or whether it's these basic physical laws governing everything, there's not a lot of room left for freedom. So now you might be tempted to just ignore the question, ignore the mystery of free will. Say, oh, well, it's just a historical anecdote, it's sophomoric, it's a question with no answer, just forget about it. But the question keeps staring you right in the face. You think about individuality, for example, who you are. Who you are is mostly a matter of the free choices that you make. Or take responsibility. You can only be held responsible, you can only be found guilty, or you can only be admired or respected for things you did of your own free will. So the question keeps coming back, and we don't really have a solution to it. It starts to look like all your decisions are really just a charade. Think about how it happens. There's some electrical activity in your brain. Your neurons fire. They send a signal down into your nervous system. It passes along down into your muscle fibers. They twitch. You might, say, reach out your arm. Looks like it's a free action on your part. But every one of those, every part of that process is actually governed by physical law, chemical laws, electrical laws, and so on. So now it starts to look like the Big Bang set up the initial conditions, and the whole rest of our history, the whole rest of human history and even before, is really just sort of the playing out of subatomic particles according to these basic fundamental physical laws. we're special. We think we have some kind of special dignity. But that now comes under threat. I mean, that's really challenged by this picture. So you might be saying, well, wait a minute, what about quantum mechanics? I know enough contemporary physical theory to know it's not really like that. It's really a probabilistic theory. There's room, it's loose, it's not deterministic. And that's going to enable us to understand free will. But if you look at the details, it's not really going to help, because what happens is you have some very small quantum particles, and their behavior is apparently a bit random. They sort of swerve. Their behavior is absurd in the sense that it's unpredictable, and we can't understand it based on anything that came before. It just does something out of the blue, according to a probabilistic framework. But is that going to help with freedom? I mean, should our freedom just be a matter of probabilities, just some random swerving in a chaotic system? That starts to seem like it's worse. I'd rather be a gear in a big deterministic physical machine than just some random swerving. So we can't just ignore the problem. We have to find room in our contemporary worldview for persons, with all that that entails, not just bodies, but persons. And that means trying to solve the problem of freedom, finding room for choice and responsibility, and trying to understand individuality.
I wake up in the morning and I consciously create my day the way I want it to happen. Now sometimes because my mind is examining all the things that I need to get done, it takes me a little bit to settle down and get to the point of where I'm actually intentionally creating my day. But here's the thing, when I create my day, and out of nowhere, little things happen that are so unexplainable. I know that they are the process or the result of my creation. And the more I do that, the more I build a neural net in my brain that I accept that that's possible. It gives me the power and the incentive to do it the next day.
attempts have been made to contain those experiences which happen at the edge, at the limit, where the mind is vulnerable. But I think we are in a very significant moment in history. Those moments, those what I call liminal, limit, frontier, edge zone experiences are actually now becoming the norm. These multiplicities and distinctions and differences that have given great difficulty to the old mind are actually through entering into their very essence, tasting and feeling their uniqueness. One might make a breakthrough to that common something that holds them together. And so the main character is, to this new mind, greater mind. A mind that yet is to be. And when we have it, obviously enter into that mode, you can see a radical subjectivity, radical attunement to individuality, uniqueness, to that which the mind is, opens itself to a vast objectivity. So the story is a story of that. The moment is not just a passing empty, nothing. Yet, this is in the way in which these secret passages happen. Yes, it's empty with such fullness that the great moment, the great life of the universe is pulsating. And each one, each object, each place, each act gives spark. And that story is singular, but in fact, it's story after story.
That book, Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said. That's the one he wrote really fast. It just like flowed right out of him. He felt he was sort of channeling it or something. But anyway, about 4 years after it was published, he was at this party and he met this woman who had the same name as the woman character in the book. And she had a boyfriend with the same name as the boyfriend character in the book. And she was having an affair with this guy, the chief of police. And he had the same name as the chief of police in his book. So she's telling him this stuff from her life, and everything she's saying is right out of his book. So that's really freaking him out. But what can he do? And then shortly after that, he was going to mail a letter, and he saw this kind of dangerous, shady-looking guy standing by his car. But instead of avoiding him, which he said he usually would have done, he just walked right up to him and said, "Can I help you?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I ran out of gas." So he pulls out his wallet and he hands him some money, which he says he never would have done. And then he gets home and he thinks, well, wait a second. This guy, he can't get to a gas station. He's out of gas. So he gets back in his car. He goes, finds the guy, takes him to the gas station. And as he's pulling up at the gas station, he realizes, hey, this is in my book too. This exact station, this exact guy, everything. So this whole episode is kind of creepy, right? And he's telling his priest about it, describing how he wrote this book, and then 4 years later, all these things happened to him. And as he's telling him to him, the priest says, "That's the book of Acts. You're describing the book of Acts." And he's like, "I've never read the book of Acts." Acts takes place in 50 AD when it was written, supposedly. So Philip K. Dick had this theory that time was an illusion and that we were all actually in 50 AD. And the reason he had written this book was that he had somehow momentarily punctured through this illusion, this veil of time. What he had seen there was what was going on in the Book of Acts. And he was really into Gnosticism and this idea that this demiurge or demon had created this illusion of time to make us forget, that Christ was about to return and the kingdom of God was about to arrive. And that we're all in 50 AD and there's someone trying to make us forget, that God is imminent. And that's what time is. That's what all of history is. It's just kind of this continuous, daydreaming, distraction. And so I read that, and I was like, well, that's weird. And then that night, I had a dream, and there was this guy in the dream who was supposed to be a psychic, but I was skeptical. I was like, he's not really a psychic, and I'm just thinking to myself. And then suddenly, I started floating, like levitating up to the ceiling. And as I almost go through the roof, I'm like, okay, Mr. Psychic, I believe you. You're a psychic. Put me down, please. Feet touch the ground, the psychic turns into this woman in a green dress, and this woman is Lady Gregory. Now, Lady Gregory was Yeats's patron, this Irish person, and though I'd never seen her image, I was just sure that this was the face of Lady Gregory. So we're walking along, Lady Gregory turns to me and says, let me explain to you the nature of the universe. Philip K. Dick is right about time, but he's wrong that it's 50 AD. Actually, there's only one instant, and it's right now, and it's eternity. And it's an instant in which God is posing a question. And that question is basically, do you want to, be one with eternity? Do you want to be in heaven? And we're all saying, no thank you, not just yet. And so time is actually just this constant saying no to God's invitation. I mean, that's what time is. And it's no more 50 AD than it's 2001. There's just this one instant, and that's what we're always in. And then she tells me that actually this is the narrative of everyone's life. That, behind the phenomenal difference, there is but one story. And that's the story of moving from the no to the yes. All of life is like, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you. And ultimately it's, yes, I give in. Yes, I accept. Yes, I embrace. That's the journey. Everyone gets to the yes in the end, right? Right. So we continue walking. And my dog runs over to me as I'm petting him. Really happy to see him die. He's been dead for years. So I'm petting him, and I realize there's this kind of gross oozing stuff coming out of his stomach. And I look over at Lady Gregory, and she sort of coughs. She's like, oh, excuse me. And there's vomit dribbling down her chin, and it smells really bad. Wait a second, that's not just the smell of vomit. That's the smell of a dead person vomit. And then I realize I'm actually in the land of the dead, and everyone around me is dead. When I finally woke up, I was like, whoa, that wasn't a dream. That was a visitation to this real place, the land of the dead.
So what happened? I mean, how did you finally get out of it?
Oh man, it was just like one of those like life-altering experiences. I mean, I could never really look at the world the same way again after that.
I mean, like, how did you finally get out of the dream? See, that's my problem. I'm trapped. I keep thinking that I'm waking up, but I'm still in a dream. It seems like it's going on forever. I can't get out of it. I want to wake up for real.
But if that's what you're thinking, I mean, you probably should. I mean, you know, if you can wake up, you should. Because, you know, someday, you know, you won't be able to. So just, but it's easy. You know, just wake up.
I believe the Earth is millions of years old. I believe that those creations weren't, Tyrannosaurus Rex wasn't hanging out with Noah. Brontosauruses weren't on the Ark. Those are all creatures from a different order. Before the Ice Age. Now, but I'm going to tell you something. I believe what I'm teaching you not because of science, but because I believe this is what the Scripture reveals. Could I be wrong on some of this? Absolutely. Am I open to that? Sure I am. But I'll just show you what I've discovered. You judge for yourself. Let's go back in time. Isaiah was given a glimpse into this period or epoch, and he saw Lucifer as he once was. Notice the 12th verse of Isaiah 14. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. You are cut down to the ground. You who weakened the nations. What nations? Those who see you will gaze at you and consider you and say, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook what? Kingdoms. I wonder what kingdoms are talking about. And made the world as a wilderness. When was the world made as a wilderness? When he fell. So the world was here when he fell. He was cast to the ground. Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven to earth. He was cast here. There was something here. It was destroyed. The world became a wilderness. Hebrew, desert or deserted place. Cities were here because they were destroyed and did not open the house of his prisoners. In other words, there were prisoners taken by him and he wouldn't let them out. There was something on the earth before Adam was here. Long, long ago. Dinosaurs did not live in our time. When did they live? Millions of years ago. Before an age we call the Ice Age. Ezekiel was given a glimpse into this period. Therefore I brought fire from the midst of you, and it devoured you. And I turned you to ashes. This is so important. Circle the word ashes. It's the Hebrew word for dirt, dust, or ashes. Satan started, listen, as a covering cherub, perhaps the most beautiful of all. He ended up as dirt and ashes. From glory to dust. Now let's keep reading. On the earth, in the sight of all who saw you. Evidently people saw him when he fell. And it wasn't Adam and Eve either. Now this is what happened. Satan was cast from heaven to the earth. The earth was here. The earth was then destroyed. It became a wilderness. Whatever was on the earth was destroyed by a flood. He flooded the earth, and then he took the sun, or the light as it was in that age, and removed it from the earth. How many of you know what happens when you put water and you take heat away from it? What does the water do? It turns to ice. I believe the dinosaurs were destroyed by the fall of Satan. He was the meteor that hit the earth.
State of life, being a state of existence. You can't learn it in state of life being a state of existence. You can't learn it in...
But the staggering discovery that we're going to explore a little bit is that reality is not local. If you take two photons that are speeding away from each other at the speed of light, measurement in one immediately affects the other one. Instantaneously, they're somehow connected. The particles seem to be inseparably connected to an indivisible whole. They apparently are aware of what's happening to the other one. And we now discover that every particle in the universe apparently is immediately connected. It's as if they can communicate instantaneously, not the speed of light, much faster. And the implications of that are staggering. Now, the first thing that we discover as we get into this world is we wonder, why do they call it quantum physics? Because we discover everything is quantized. For example, if I took a ruler, no matter what length it is, I could cut it in half. If it's a foot, I can make a 6-inch rule out of it, right? I take the 6-inch rule, I can divide it in half, make it 3 inches. No matter what length I have, you and I would conclude I can always cut it in half. No matter how small it gets, I can always divide whatever it is by 2. Turns out that's not true. It turns out there is a length. Smaller than that doesn't exist.
Jazz to me is a state of life being a state of existence. You can't learn it in
is to push it as far as you can.
Time. There is no unit of time smaller than 10 to the minus 43 seconds. Now that's very small. But the bizarre thing that we have a tough time getting an intellectual grasp of is, why can't it be smaller? We discover that length, mass, energy, everything in the universe is quantized, comes in specific units. It's digital, not analog. It consists, in effect, of symbols rather than actual quantities. most everybody, is a guy by the name of Albert Einstein. He had a life of failures and disappointments. His elementary school teachers described him as a foolish dreamer and asked him to drop out of school. He didn't pass the gear. He had very few friends in school. He didn't get a high school diploma, couldn't cut it. Had to retake the exams for college. And he failed the exam for the Swiss military at flat feet. After graduation, couldn't get a job. Einstein's theory of relativity that made him so famous was simply to recognize that you and I live in a four-dimensional world. Length, width, height, and time. 4 dimensions. He went to his grave frustrated that he couldn't integrate it all with gravity. And all he had to do was go up one more dimension to 5 dimensions, as we'll see later. problem is that you and I are familiar with a geometry that's known as Euclidean geometry, and that basically argues that space is three-dimensional. And Euclid's original writings, called Elements, was revered for 2,300 years. So you and I tend to think, scheme, conceive, plan in Euclidean geometry. All of us from school learned that a triangle has 180 degrees. To the extent that those angles add up to more than 180 degrees on a triangle, it's telling you that you are in curved space. And that's exactly what Einstein began to recognize as he wrestled with the problems of light and time and the three dimensions that we all are familiar with. That's how you realized that we were in a four-dimensional space, not a three-dimensional space, and that led to his theory of relativity. How would you find the hypotenuse of a four-dimensional triangle? If I asked you to draw one, you'd have a great deal of difficulty. Unless you had some very special skills, you probably are not able to draw a four-dimensional sketch called a hypercube. Salvador Dali used it in one of his paintings called The Crucifixion of Christ. Now, suppose I wanted to find the hypotenuse in an n-dimensional space. You couldn't possibly visualize it, but you could calculate if I gave you the lengths. The main point is, as we go up in higher dimensions, we're going to discover that the various forces that we're struggling with in subatomic physics start to become clear. Turns out, it comes as a surprise to many, that even adopting the most advanced mathematics that we have, you cannot prove that you cannot go backwards in time. That leads to some logical contradictions, so misunderstand me. But it's interesting mathematically that the reversal of time is at least conceptually possible. One of the things that time travel leads to, of course, is logical contradictions. The idea of going back in time and killing your grandfather. How can you exist? You get those problems. You also end up with events that have no beginning. And as most of you probably have encountered examples of literature called time warps, where this kind of an idea is used as a literary device for entertainment. But I came across what has to be the ultimate time warp story by Robert Heinlein. If you're a science fiction buff, you know the name Robert Heinlein, a very imaginative writer. But he wrote a story in which a baby girl is mysteriously dropped off at an orphanage in Cleveland in 1945. Follow this character. Jane grows up lonely and dejected, not knowing who her parents are, until one day in 1963, she is strangely attracted to a drifter. She falls in love with him. And just when things are finally looking up for Jane, a series of disasters strike. First, she becomes pregnant by the drifter, who then disappears. Second, during her complicated delivery, the doctors are shocked to discover that Jane has two sets of organs, and to save her life, they are forced to surgically convert her to a him. Finally, a mysterious stranger kidnaps her baby from the delivery room. Reeling from these disasters, rejected by society and scorned by fate, he becomes a drunkard and a drifter. Not only has Jane lost her parents and her lover, but he has lost his only child as well. Years later, in 1970, he stumbles into a lonely bar called Pop's Place and spills out his pathetic story to an elderly bartender. The sympathetic bartender offers the drifter a chance to avenge the stranger who left her pregnant and abandoned on the condition that he join the Time Traveler's Corps. Both of them enter a time machine, and the bartender drops off the drifter in 1963. The drifter is strangely attracted to a young orphan woman who subsequently becomes pregnant. The bartender then goes forward 9 months, kidnaps the baby girl from the hospital, and drops off the baby in an orphanage back in 1945. Then the drifter eventually gets his life together, becomes a respected and elderly member of the Time Traveler's Corps, and then disguises himself as a bartender and has the most difficult mission, a date with destiny, meeting a certain drifter at Pop's Place in 1970. You follow all that? The question is, who is Jane's mother, father, grandfather, grandmother, son, daughter, granddaughter, and grandson? The girl, the drifter, the bartender, of course, are all the same person. And of course, it's all done tongue-in-cheek. It's Robert Heinlein's creative way of probably convoluting the most absurd application of these time warp ideas. But it's kind of interesting what Albert Einstein said about all this. He says, people like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between the past, the present, and the future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. As you build up the mathematics, adding dimensions, each time you add a dimension, more and more of it come together. And that leads you then to what's called today a theory of everything. What they're trying to do is find the mathematics and the conceptions that totally reconcile all that we know, both at the cosmic level, gravity and planets and all that, all the way down to the subatomic level.
You're out, touch, bang.
As you read the scientific philosophers, the physicists, they have this view that we not only will we understand these hyperspaces, they believe that maybe they theorize that may be the ultimate destiny of man. Because as our own universe collapses or has problems, they can visualize a day, obviously we're in the future, in which intelligent life may have to escape ultimate collapse by fleeing into hyperspace.
All the upstate DJs represent upstateunderground.net, facebook.com/Skywire. Special thanks to Pretty Poison number 9. And to my sisters, this one's for you, Danny.